Welcome to Flow with Arman Assadi. I am very excited to share a conversation with an amazing friend of mine. She is a wonderful, wonderful human being. And the moment that I met her, which was years ago, I decided that I was going to interview her and have her on my future show. And now that day is here, which is super cool. So I actually met the guest today, Yohanna Mannelqvist. How was that, Yohanna? That was pretty good, right? Pretty good. I had to practice that a few times. It's a beautiful name. I actually met Yohanna through my good friend, Jason Silva, who she was also friends with. And at the time, we were in Tulum on a trip together, Jason and I, and Yohanna was there, and we were all hanging out. And we actually, the way we met was going snorkeling in a cenote. And I will leave it at that because the story that Yohanna told me that day and the days that we were hanging out together were just so incredibly inspiring that I knew I had to have her on the show. And that day is now upon us. As you are listening to this episode, please let me know what you think. Let me know what your favorite part of the episode is. And to do that and get in touch with me, just shoot me a text message at 619-825-2595. And that is done through a service I use called Superphone. And I really believe that text message, SMS, building that list is the new email marketing of today. And no matter what you do, whether it be you're in real estate or you're a yoga instructor or you're an e-commerce business, build that text message list. The engagement and impact of connecting with people one-on-one through their phones, through text message is incredible. So I recommend it for anybody who's doing any form of independent work, freelancing, consulting, entrepreneur of any kind. If you want to get access to Superphone through a special offer, just shoot me a text to that same number with hashtag Superphone, and it will send you a link to check them out. With that said, here is my conversation with the wonderful Yohanna. Yohanna, thank you again, seriously, for making time. I've been wanting to get you on for a while. I'm glad we finally found a date. And here you are sitting in Sweden where this journey first started for you. And you and I met through a mutual friend, Jason Silva. And what a beautiful way to meet through an amazing person.
Totally.
I'll never forget the day we went snorkeling with Jason. And it was just a magical experience. And I remember very specifically, we were snorkeling in that cenote and we were sitting on a rock, and I started to hear and learn and ask questions about your story.
Mm-hmm.
And that conversation started and pretty much went all day. It went through the day to dinner and everything. And we really got to know each other through those few days. And I remember thinking very specifically to myself, one day in the future, when I have a podcast, she's going to be on because this story resonates so deeply with me.
Mm.
And I very rarely ask somebody to give a sort of story of where the metamorphosis, where the transformation began. But in your case, the story of a life that you once had that was seemingly perfect on the outside, but burning out.
Mm.
And now this transformation of going from burnout to bliss is fascinating to me.
Mm.
So I'd love to start there. And I'd love for you to just act like I don't know anything. And I bet you I will still learn new things. But what was going on in that life? Talk to me about that life and where you were at and why you think you got to the point where burnout ultimately showed up.
Good question. And I find it interesting to answer this question where I'm at now. I think if you would have asked me a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, it would have been very different. But I think just overall, I've always been a very hungry person, really eager, really forward, really driven. So I started working at a very young age. I was literally begging my parents to start working at age 12. My parents were like, no, Johanna, you are too young. I'm like, please, please, please. Anyways, I had my first job when I was 14. And that continued. I was working throughout my studies. I was very committed in school. but also a little bit of a wild one. So even though I was,
Mm.
behaving well in school, I was always the last one to leave the party, the first one at the gym, and that just continued, right? So I went to school. I'm based in Sweden, actually exactly where I am right now, where I'm sitting, where we had a countryside house when I was young, and we spent the summers here on the west coast of Sweden, and then we had a place in the city of Gothenburg. So I started my own company when I was 17. Um,
Wow.
Very driven, had my entrepreneurial little life. Moved to London when I was 19 to study fashion. And I was studying and working meanwhile and climbed that ladder, right? Climbed that career ladder. Um, and living life to its fullest in each and every little area of my life. I think that is what eventually made me burn out, right? I was living very unsustainably. I was acting like I was more or less immortal, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Pushing the boundaries too far in each area of your life? Is that how you describe it? Or
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it started from a really good place, right? It started just from a place of
yeah.
having life itself. And I guess today, when I look back at my journey and look back at my upbringing and my earlier years, I can definitely see that there is somewhat of an unhealthy, drive there as well, needing to perform and achieve to feel that I'm good or that I'm worthy, right? So there was also that aspect too, and the other kind of part was just a zest for life, right? Like I just love human beings. I love creating. I
Yeah.
love traveling. I love partying. I love a lot of things, and I wanted to do everything at once.
Was this an innate thing that was unique to you, or does a lot of this come from both or one of your parents specifically, particularly like the drive and the zest for life?
Interesting question because I'm currently in my family house. I've been spending a lot of
Right.
time with my parents, so it's become very obvious that I'm very different to them.
Mm,
With that said, I've picked up on a lot of bad habits from them too, so don't get me wrong. But
yeah.
I've always been a little bit of the black sheep of the family because
Oh,
both my parents, they've chosen very warm professions, like working with human beings, um, really, really dedicating their lives to better the world. Why, I had this idea of becoming, this fashion executive, living a very glamorous life in the big city, kind of Sex in the City style, right? And it all happened, it all came alive, and even more so, only to understand that I was miserable and I was so materially rich, but so deeply empty inside because I've just burned like myself on both ends.
yeah. I mean, this is what really stands out about your story and resonates with me as well because I went through something very similar, but it's an epidemic that has occurred and continues to occur for so many people, and it really fucking perplexes me, Johanna. I really want your help with this. I
Mm,
really want to unpack this and understand this because we spend all of our adolescent years, our childhood, dreaming of who we want to become.
mm,
We feel and imagine and think logically that we're moving in the right direction. And we wake up one day and many of our dreams come true. In your case, it was Sex in the City, fashion executive. This is everything you wanted.
mm,
And then another day, you wake up and you feel absolutely exhausted, burnt out, depressed, anxiety. I mean, different people experience different things. And I'm trying to remember from our conversation what emotional factors and mental health factors were at play for you. But
mm,
I know for me, I got to a point where it was so simple. It was like a switch one day. One day everything was fine and I was in my bliss bubble.
mm,
And then what felt like very suddenly, I was extremely unfulfilled and one environmental factor changed. I had a boss that I just didn't click with. I was a bit of a black sheep and I did things very differently at Google. And even within Google, where you think that would be tolerated
mm,
or accepted and even promoted, it wasn't in that case with that person. We're talking about a very big company, right? It's not like the values of Google are going to outweigh your individual situation.
Mm,
So that person was very the whole department really fell apart actually, and a lot of people started leaving, and then I felt a lot of pressure, and the next thing you know, I'm miserable. But this really perplexes me. It's like, for me, it ended up being, oh my God, look, this is my back is against the wall. I'm trying everything to find a different role at Google, to find a different company. I was too scared to become an entrepreneur or solopreneur, as I like to call it.
mm,
And then all of a sudden, I feel I have no choice but to
mm,
jump and
mm.
do it. And why do you feel that is, that life puts us in these situations where we all of a sudden become miserable when really we set out to achieve a goal or a dream, which in your case was a wonderful one.
Mm.
Why is that? Why does that happen?
Well, I mean, in your case, I'm curious to understand how connected you were to yourself and your own truth before this one event, because it seems like you have this one event painted out to be the reason, but I'm pretty sure that there was like all these other things that you were just ignoring or pushing away, like repressing, suppressing, right? Like, so that's
Yes.
what I'm curious about for you.
Well, I think you're 100% right. And in hindsight, I can look back and say it was absolutely meant to be. Um, the uh, uh, the North Star that I had was not. Um, you know what it is? It's like, oftentimes when we're young, we have this uninformed optimism. We
Mm,
don't quite yet have enough experience of who we are. We haven't done the work to understand what we are potentially
mm,
suppressing. In my case, I was suppressing the full expression of myself,
mm,
which is a very independent entrepreneur, creator that would never be a good employee,
mm,
but I just did what I needed to do to be a good employee and get the best job I possibly could at the best company I possibly could
mm,
with the constraints that I was given. So for me, what came to the surface by life kind of slapping me and waking me up and saying, I'm going to make you miserable until you figure this out for yourself, was that realizing that my path was different. That was a very limited path, and I knew it in my heart. And
mm,
that's why I knew I was so deathly afraid of jumping and leaping into this unknown abyss of entrepreneurship
mm,
where there's no boss, no help, no guarantees, no nothing. I was just afraid of it. It was resistance. It
mm,
was resistance, but it was actually the way I think of as ultimately a better North Star, and one that was more aligned with my true inner, my true higher self. Really, is the way I think about it
mm.
often now today. What about for you?
Well, so the way I see it, so today, burnout is classified to be a work-related disease, right? Which is great in a way. And many think that, it was my job that made me burn out, or, they want to point fingers and blame one thing, one event. And, when they tweak that, then their life changed and they healed and they had this whole new life. Um, I believe that there's always different causes for a burnout, right? Like there's not only one thing. It's usually several things baked into one, and then your job may be that like final thing that puts you like to the edge, but there is other stuff behind that. And I think one of the key reasons to why people quote unquote burn out, because it's different type of burnouts, right? But burnout is that we're living out of alignment, right? So we live, as you say, in fear. We live in conditioning. Like we're deeply, we feel these this heavy expectations of like how we should live. You're at Google, you should be super happy, like so many people's dream to be in your position. Same for me. Had a really, I was 24, 25 years old. I had a senior fashion title, living in this, mansion in Mayfair with a maid and my boyfriend, and flying first class and having like all this stuff that like you're meant to have to be happy, right? I was like, check, check,
Mhm.
check. I'm ticking all the boxes. I've got much more than I could ever dream and imagine of. and I feel so miserable. So it's like, wait, like who sold me the dream of like this was supposed to be happiness? Like I felt like I want to have like, what's the return policy on this? I was like, can I just like restart this? This is not what I had imagined. I
Yes.
think for me it was deeply like living out of alignment with myself. And we as human
Yes.
beings, we're always looking for truth and balance. And I think I want to believe that we're good in our nature. So when we're out of balance, it becomes very obvious. And our bodies, like for me, in my example, my body had been speaking to me for many years, but I was the master of ignoring those signals, right?
Mhm.
My digestion was out of whack. I felt stressed. I felt anxious. I felt moody. I had some hormonal problems. I was very underweight. I didn't sleep good at night. And this didn't happen overnight.
Wow.
It was like creeping up on me, right? But I was like, whatever, whatever, And then suddenly, that burnout, it sounds very drastic, and it might
Right.
be a drastic moment. But actually, as you said, if you look back at it in retrospective, you're like, well, actually, there were signs all along.
Yes. Right. So in essence, it's an accumulation of all those factors.
Absolutely.
What was your experience of burnout like? What actually happened when it hit the edge?
Yeah. So there was a couple of different phases, I'd say. One big part or one symptom that really showed that something was out of balance was my extreme stress, and poor sleep. And at that point, I was also very underweight. So not only did I burn out, but I also had an eating disorder. So
Wow.
I was underweight and I couldn't focus, and I was constantly so distracted. I was never present, right? I was always like concerned about the future, like I was mostly living in the future rather than in the past, but never really present. So even though I had all these things, I couldn't really enjoy it because I was always concerned about stuff, right? Like
Hmm.
necessary stuff. There was definitely like a few, let's say, breaking moments that, or maybe you want to call it rock bottoms.
Hmm.
But an eating disorder was definitely one of them. Having my doctor putting my hand on my shoulder and asking me, Johanna, how are you? And I go, yeah, 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 I'm great. No, Johanna, really, how are you? I see you have an eating disorder. So does my sister, she said, and I'm going to get you help. So that was like a real breaking moment to actually ask for help and confess that I had a problem that was bigger than myself that I couldn't handle. I mean, I was like this independent, like superwoman.
Yeah.
I don't need any help, right?
Yeah. And what eating disorder were you dealing with specifically?
So after that, I was sent to therapy and eating disorder clinic, but I was there. Um, I don't know what you call it in English, but I could go there, get my treatment, I could leave, so I wasn't like
Hmm.
hospitalized or anything.
Hmm.
And the diagnosis was not bulimia, not anorexia. I would say that it was orthorexic. I don't know if you heard about that ever.
No, I
So
haven't.
orthorexia actually stems from this overly obsession of eating the right things,
Hmm.
right? I think actually right now what's happening with the wellness world and all of the, you
Uh-oh.
know, self-named claimed nutritionist and wellness experts
Nutrition
everywhere.
is the new religion, man. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
of course. And this social media, Instagram culture that we're creating, for me, when I see that coming from this background, I see that we're creating a new generation of eating disorders because there's this obsession of what to eat, how to eat, when to eat, what not to eat. I mean, it's so confusing that people more or less stop eating because they don't even know what is healthy anymore.
Right. Right.
So it started just from, first actually having an interest in wellness and health because I always had that,
Hmm.
to going to becoming obsessed and then trying to channel control, right? Like I had an extreme need for control, but then if I couldn't control other things in my life, at least what I could control was my body and what I ate. So as long as I was perfect and my plate was perfect, everything was perfect.
Wow. It's amazing how the way we do anything is how we do everything. And often our character really reflects back to us in any activity or any habit that we have. And it takes a very self-conscious, aware person in order to begin to even realize, that process. So I'm curious, like when you really hit, these multiple rock bottom moments, looking back, was this an awakening moment of any kind, or have you had awakening moments of any kind, and when did they happen? Because I mean, you've obviously clearly transformed. You're sitting here, your eyes
Mhm.
are directly with me. You're very present. You're very healthy. I want to unpack all of that too. I mean, you are like the epitome of health now. So, what was your moment of awakening that started the process?
Starting in therapy gave me a lot of tools to manage my eating because like you'll have to understand if you don't if I think it's hard to understand if you never had an eating disorder, but when for you that have knows what it's like because it takes over your whole life. Like at that point, it was like 80% of my brain capacity was going around my physical appearance, what to eat, what not to eat. So it was just that was kind of like starting to unpack things, and I started to realize that there was so much that I was escaping from inside, right? Um, and I escaped not only through controlling food, like I was, partying quite a lot. I was using, drugs and stuff, like alcohol and substances to, numb myself or, shopping a lot, like everything that would distract me externally. So I
Mm,
didn't have to face all the stuff that was happening internally. So I think the therapy for my eating disorder was also way beyond the food itself, right? It's just shed a lot of light
yeah.
on problems that I have in myself. So that was definitely an awakening moment. But when I really hit burnout, I had not really hit burnout at that point. I hit
Mm.
burnout when I actually took time to rest. Because what
Huh.
happens when you're constantly like in this crazy stress mode is that your body never really goes into a state of relaxation. So you never really feel how tired you are. But I remember that I was searching for answers and I was walking on King's Road in London and I was listening to this podcast with this monk that he was explaining that the best decisions you make for yourself are the ones made in silence. And I was walking on King's Road, among, traffic and noise and all this, different forces pulling me left and right. And I was like, I can't
Mm.
even hear myself. I'm like, I don't even know who I am because I can't even
Wow.
hear myself. So I called my mom. I said, hey, like, I need to leave London for a bit. Like, can we just go to a spa? Like, I just need to get to like the
Wow.
countryside of Sweden. So a couple of days after we went to Sweden to the countryside and we checked into a spa. It was completely quiet, just by the water, so serene. And the moment I put my head on my pillow, I collapsed. Like my body, like just collapsed. Like I couldn't get out of bed. And that was like my burnout breaking moment.
Wow. So you were essentially just, without realizing it, in this constant fight or flight state. And the moment that, your parasympathetic system kind of turned on, you finally were able to, it's almost like the burnout started happening, but the healing started happening at the same
Exactly.
time. Like the body went into taking a breath finally. Wow.
Exactly.
Wow.
And that's the thing. I had been in this fight and flight mode for years, right? Like this doesn't happen overnight. You can work hard for, periods and then go into a restful time, a restful mode. But I was just constantly like on, right? I had never had anything off.
Yeah.
Like if I had a gap in my schedule, I would fill it with like a workout, a coffee, this, that. Like there was not a single moment
Mm,
of the day I would allow myself to sit with myself.
mm. What does your schedule look like today?
Well, actually, right now, since Corona hit, I'm more busy than ever with work.
Yeah.
But
Are there
I
just some do you feel great opportunities that you need to be focused on, or in what sense, what's driving that busyness?
Well, it's interesting because I was in Tulum when Corona hit and I couldn't get my flight back to Sweden. So I got stuck in Mexico. And from one night to another, I couldn't do any of my retreats, events, or classes, but all of my clients and students, they were sitting in their apartments in New York, in London, pulling their hair out with anxiety and stress and like, Johanna, can we practice online, please? I was like,
Oh, wow.
so I jumped on and I went into the online teaching world very quickly, and I had a couple of classes per week, a great response, and amazing community coming together online. So that's been a big part of what's made
Wow.
is actually that going very digital with everything I do.
Hmm.
I also
You
coach.
have to. You
Yeah,
have to.
you had to pivot, right? You had to like reinvent
Oh,
your.
yeah.
But I'm also coaching, and my coaching clients are also online. And with this crisis that we've been experiencing collectively, I've seen a newfound curiosity around spirituality. People are now
Mm,
their way of lives, right? Like we can all see this I'm sure within yourself, within myself, within people around us, that there was like this break and like this moment to just reflect and be like, hey, like, how am I living my life? Like, what is
yes.
real success? Like, who am I, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm so glad you bring this up. Even as you were talking about your own awakening, I wanted to bring up, this concept of what do you see at a larger level, not even just necessarily since the pandemic or some of these crises, but and maybe it's accelerated now, but from the sense that you get over the last, I don't know, however long you've been doing your coaching now, do you feel that the amount of people that are, as some people would call it, Sam Harris would call it, waking up, do you
Mm,
feel that that is expanding? And what are you seeing with people? Do you see, you just mentioned like with this pandemic, it's almost like people seem to be reevaluating their lives. Why
mm,
am I doing what I do? Does
mm,
this really matter to me? If
mm,
I die tomorrow, is this what I want to be doing?
mm,
If a loved one dies tomorrow, am I spending enough time connecting with them?
mm,
And all these various things that are very deep questions that we often ignore. In my world, I think I get a little bit less access than you, because when you are doing coaching, you get
mm.
this amazing sample of different kinds of people going through various struggles, but I'm sure you see some patterns and commonalities. So I'm curious what you're seeing.
Absolutely. And as you say, I saw this already before, Corona hit and all of
Yeah.
this. Um, so what I'm seeing is that people are questioning and reevaluating, definitely. I just think that there's a questioning of the whole system and, life's meaning itself. I think we can all agree that we've built somewhat of an unsustainable system, right? And we're just moving so rapidly that we don't even have the chance to enjoy what we create or what we
Mhm.
earn, right? Because when we have the holiday that we've been looking forward to, we're so stressed out. So most likely we're sick or something, right? So I think there is I can definitely see that there is an awakening and there is questioning. With that said, what I've also seen recently is that we're creatures of habit, right? So it's very
Mhm.
easy that we just, we have a moment of inspiration or clarity, but then now when things opening up again around the world, I also see a lot of people just going back to like their own ways of being, just because we're such
Absolutely.
creatures of habit, right?
Absolutely. People keep saying that 2020 is the most fucked up year, and there are all these memes that go around the internet that are funny and all. But if you really look at it more closely, I think, what is it about normal that was so good that so many people are craving? What is it about 2019, which by the way, everyone was complaining in 2019 as well. Everybody was complaining. Can't wait for 2020, get this shit over with. And I'm not really big on pop culture and this kind of stuff, but I find it valuable to be in tune with it and kind of be aware of what's going on, because it shows you kind of the energy of where people are at as a whole, where we are at as a whole in a country or on the planet in general. And I just saw nothing but complaints. And then 2020 comes around and shit hits the fan, and so many things go wrong, wrong, air quotes, and people can't wait to get it over with. But as you said, it was unsustainable. Like
Mm,
nobody's life was really working. And maybe at an individual level it was. Like if I can imagine somebody living in a village in Sweden might have had a pretty great life that potentially they didn't want to give up, and everything about that was fine. And there are many micro examples that were fine, but
mm,
as a country in the United States in particular, everything was not fine.
mm,
Everything does need to be questioned,
mm,
and I think that's very healthy and something that we shouldn't avoid. And that concerns me a little bit, that other side of the coin that you just brought up. It's like, yes, people are waking up. Yes, people are evaluating, but I hope we don't run back too quickly
mm,
to those habits of
mm,
normal, because change is scary. Change is
mm,
very scary. And then when change is happening at a larger level that's
mm,
even beyond yourself, someone once, a psychologist I had on the show said to me, she said, "My problems seem insignificant right now
mm,
because the problems of humanity are so big,
mm,
and so heavy." Um,
mm.
I'm curious how you think this is going to play out, or at least how you hope this plays out, because there's a lot of factors going on right now. Especially, I've never been more confused in my life politically.
Mm,
Like it's just insanely confusing, and
mm,
everything feels like we're illuminating the truth day by day slowly, but it's
mm.
still very it's still very confusing.
Well, I want to go back to the hardship that we experienced. And I think if you have, or anyone that will listen to this conversation, is having or had a really rough year or rough couple of years, I really hope and I really believe that they will learn, grow, and expand from these hardships, right? This hardship. I remember one of my favorite spiritual teachers, Ramdas. He
Mm,
said that he never wish anyone his stroke, but he wishes everyone the grace from his stroke, right? Because there is
wow.
something that comes from a rock bottom. There's something that comes from hardship that is so powerful, right? There is so much energy and power in crises. So if we choose, and I say if we choose because it doesn't happen automatically, right? If we
Yeah,
choose to see these events as opportunities for us to change, as indicators that something is out of balance, like taking myself as an example, when my body was talking to me, if I had catch that earlier and like realign myself to my truth, maybe I never had to hit burnout. Maybe I never had to go so deep that I had an eating disorder. Maybe I would have been able to pivot my life to realign to what I wanted to do, what I believed in. Because what I think is happening around the world right now, even if people look successful on the outside, they're living a life that is maybe successful to the public, right? Or to like the
yeah,
general person, right? Like that picture that we painted of success and happiness, right? But it may not be success for them. Because success is not, it doesn't come in a package.
precisely.
And success needs to be redefined. And this is what I also do with my coaching clients. Is like,
Mm,
what is actually success for you? People are like, well, I mean, I guess, I have a good job and money and this and that, And I'm like, is that really what makes you happy? And they're like, well, when they really reflect upon it and when you scratch the surface of that happiness, they come many, they want to have time where their family, where they with their kids.
mm,
They want to be present and feel, grounded and happy when they're with their kids. But actually, the time that they have with their family is very limited. And when they're there, they're not present because they're on their phone, because they have
oh yeah.
this, important meeting or so on. So actually, when you look at it, it's not rocket science. It's pretty simple. Like you are not living your life according to your deepest values. You're living your life because this is meant to be success, but it doesn't matter how many bonuses you get or how many promotions or how many whatever nominations you get. If that is not what brings you happiness, you will never feel fulfilled.
So good.
So
So
simple.
good.
So simple,
It,
but so hard in the same
it's
time.
so, yes, yes. And I think that we kind of lost sight of the importance of happiness
Yeah.
for a while. About so what was that, like 10 years ago or so, when a lot of those happiness books started to come out. It was really at the forefront, but it sort of went away. And I actually wish it hadn't, because we were really accelerating the science and art of happiness, which I view more as an art that's very individual. And, when you say success, I think happiness at
Mm,
the end of the day, because success, if I view it as these external metrics, it's so boring and fleeting and empty. But if you really sit down and you say, why do you want that? 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 And you go deep enough, you find that people really do want very basic things.
mm,
What would you say to someone who dreams of leaving their old life behind and breaking free and traveling and just completely hitting the restart button? Especially as someone who, we haven't mentioned this yet, you got up one day and started a new life by moving to Tulum and
mm.
recreated yourself. So when people see you and they go, I think I resonate with that, I need to hit the restart button. What would you say to those people?
So what I see a lot is that people want to have a perfect escape plan. So they
Mm,
want to know exactly what's going to come next. And while I do suggest that everyone prepares themselves in the way that they have to prepare themselves, right? Like financially or whatever, setting yourself up with a family or whatever that might be if you have one, that's great. But when I left my fashion career, I didn't know where I was going, because for me, what was so important is to be light and carefree. And I think that's something that everyone should experience if they have the opportunity and privilege to do so. Traveling and just go wherever excites you, wherever the flow takes you, right? Like literally being in that flow, like not knowing, just living day by day and being very carefree, because that's what I needed at the time. I was so full of responsibilities, and um I just wanted to be literally young, wild, and free. And I had the privilege at the time to do so, because I had left my partner, I didn't have children, I didn't have a mortgage, and I
yeah.
had set myself up financially. So I didn't have to work for a while, right? Like I had that freedom, which also was a comfort at the time to just I mean, I didn't travel very luxurious, but also not uncomfortable. I had a great life, and I felt very safe, let's say. And in that process, I could start to ask these questions. Who am I? Like, how do I actually want to spend my day? I had that space to explore myself,
Hmm.
discover myself. And from there, I just started rebuilding my life, but with a completely different intention or mindset than I had done before.
Yes.
Right? So before, I think I was more living my life with the end goal in mind, right? Like I wanted to be whatever successful. I wanted to, have this, recognition or status and money and blah blah blah, all this stuff. While now it's like, no, I don't care about that. For a moment, how do I want to spend my days? Like, how do I want to feel? What do I want to do? Like, what really brings me joy? What fills my days with meaning? And I'm like, well, yoga has been so important on my path of healing,
Hmm.
of restoring my body, understanding the nature of my mind, connecting with myself on a deeper level, becoming a better human being, really. So it's like,
Hmm.
I'd love to share this beautiful transformative practice with other people, because for me, it's been so helpful. And it feels so meaningful to actually bring that to someone else so they can find them answers, because I have no answers for anyone, right? I'm just here to, mirror and channel a few things. That's it. But and like, I don't know,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
so I started teaching yoga, and that was just like a very natural progression from fashion. And then I left, and I did. It wasn't a straight line from London to Mexico. It was a little bit of a wander of
Hmm.
all over the world, and then kind of ending up in Mexico.
Hmm.
But what I don't know if you knew is that actually when I came to Mexico, I'd been headhunted for another job. So I was actually meant to go back to Stockholm and start to build a new company for the H&M group.
Uh-oh.
Exactly.
Uh-oh. That sounds like a nice salary.
It was the perfect package, right? So in
Oh,
that,
I bet it was a hell of a package. Yeah.
yeah, and in that whole process of,
Probably throw a
putting
jet
myself.
in for you just to.
Well, they were relocating me from London. They were setting myself up in all ways possible, right? So
Hmm.
it was an amazing deal that, if you're 26 years old to be offered that. And I was too, you're speaking about fear of, leaving Google. I was fearful of saying no to this amazing opportunity because like every other fashion girl would die for this opportunity, right? So I
Sure.
said yes, but I said I needed 6 months to travel and then I'll come back. And then I never made it back.
Mm. Good for you. So you actually gave yourself the kind of, I don't want to call it an option, but you just, you put it off into the future. You said, I'm going to still do this. I'm going to
Hmm.
go on this journey and see where it takes me.
Yes.
That's perfect. Wonderful. I'm glad you did that.
Yes.
One of the things that I absolutely love hearing what many people view as extreme changes.
Mm.
This is viewed by many people as an extreme change, but I would imagine that you don't see it as very extreme. You see it as the next logical step.
Mhm.
You were on a path, similar to my own, where it was unhealthy and it was killing you. And one of the things that people are so worried about when it comes to, I appreciate so much that you said, look, like I had the opportunity and the privilege to do it this way.
Mm.
But what I want to make really clear to anybody is do it your way.
Mm.
Do it your way within the constraints and the confines of the way of what works for your life, for your family, for your kids, or whatever it might be. But every day that a person stays enslaved to a
Mm.
life that is unfulfilling and unhealthy is one more day toward the end
Mm.
where you're not enjoying life and you're not choosing happiness.
Mm.
Happiness is a choice. Going back to that discussion of happiness, I would love to see more people talking more about happiness being the North Star. And
Mm.
so many people say, you can't be happy. It shouldn't even be something that we aim for. I disagree. I think that life is too short not to be happy and to
Mm.
be in bliss. And you can do it in a way that works for you. And some people say, well, I'd rather just create meaning because there's so much suffering in life. And I agree with that. There's so much suffering in life. So I'm not saying let's be in a bliss bubble, but I am saying that happiness, which is the reframe of suffering into meaning, is a
Mm.
choice.
Mm.
And so there's so many people that can take your example of your story, which is viewed as very extreme, leaving it all behind. But I love it because what it illuminates, Johanna, is especially for me and so many people, my life was all about climbing a ladder.
Mm.
Okay. And we're so afraid of jumping off the ladder because we
Mm.
feel like the way your life went, you had to leave behind a very high paying, successful, achievement oriented position, especially the one you were even about to go into at H&M, which is just up and up and up and up in everyone else's eyes.
Mm.
But you actually said, fuck the ladder.
Mm.
There is no ladder. There's only the now. There's
Mm.
only the present and whatever feels right to me in the present. And then you followed, you tapped into flow in your life and you surrendered. And
Mm.
these beautiful things showed up. And now look at your life. I mean, who's here to measure success? Because if I was God and I was down here measuring success and there really was this hierarchy, which there is no fucking hierarchy.
Mm.
There's no hierarchy. It's just, is this person living in the fullest expression of themselves?
Mm.
Look at the number of people you're helping. Look at the space that you're providing through yoga and
Mm.
meditation. Look at the work that you're doing one on one with people. And by the way, back to your podcast
Mm.
example, a podcast changed your life. This podcast and you expressing your truth and your story is going to change someone else's life as well,
Mm.
and will probably cause that awakening. So
Mm.
how amazing is that?
It's beautiful, Arman, and you just wrap it up so beautifully. And I must just go back to that fact of happiness being a choice because you also asked me what kept me busy here the last couple of months. I'm writing a
Yeah.
synopsis for a book,
You're
and
writing a what? Sorry.
a synopsis for a book.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm quite excited about that. In that last chapter where I'm kind of summing everything up, actually, the title is Choosing Happiness.
Mm.
Because for me, that's kind of where it goes back to. In the end of the day, we have all these practices and tools, and there's so much to explore and so many things that we can, change and learn through. But in the end of the day, like, it's a choice that we have, and we have that choice in every given moment. Like in your next breath, you can choose. Are you going to choose something that brings you closer to yourself, closer to that higher self, or whatever you want to call it? Or do you want to regress? Like, you always have this option of fear and love, right?
Mm.
Light or darkness. Like, it's always like you choose. Like, I choose to be happy. I choose to see the beauty, the silver lining. I choose to see this in this moment. Yeah. And for some of us, it's easier than others, right? And for some of us, depending on where we are in life, it's easier to do so. But we all have the choice.
100%. It's the only choice that we really have.
Yeah, exactly.
It's one
Exactly.
of the few things we control.
I think about this example of these monks that um, go to prisoners, right? To prisons, and
Mhm.
they actually work on changing their mindsets to being enslaved, to being there voluntarily in, as they were in like monks in like a I don't know, in the Himalayas, right? Because the living
Yeah.
standards are actually quite similar. It's just that one is chosen and the other one isn't chosen, right? But again, if we choose the mindset, we have that choice to believe that we've chosen it and actually can liberate them, even though they're still in prison. All of a sudden, they're not slaved to their minds, right?
Mm.
So that's a powerful one.
Wild. Johanna, what are your spiritual practices and personal beliefs, if you don't mind sharing? I'm very curious.
Hmm. Well, my path has totally been through yoga, right?
Mm.
I've studied so many different spiritual practices and everything on the whole all ends of the spectrum, right? But
Mhm.
I go back a lot to yoga philosophy, to meditation. Um, so, what are my spiritual practices? I practice yoga daily, I meditate daily. Another practice that has been really powerful and helpful for me is journaling.
Mm.
Right, journaling, I think there's something so magical just happening from a thought to to the pen and paper. So those are the tools that keep on
Oh
recurring, like,
yeah.
on a daily basis. But then I have so many other practices, and but yoga is very wide and deep and grand, right? Like this, there's
Yeah, I would love to learn. By the way, this is my morning journaling notes, journaling about Johanna, and just letting it come through me. What do we need to talk about today? What's going
yeah.
to make for an amazing conversation? I journal every morning. I learned the process from a book called The Artist's Way, where she talks
Mm,
about morning pages. Just do
yes,
3 shitty pages every day, and I
beautiful.
don't always do 3. Sometimes it's 1, but that
Yeah,
consistent habit is very meditative,
yeah.
very and very spiritual. I would
Mm,
also agree. There's something about your hand, you know, pen, paper. There's something very transformative about that. Um,
mhm,
what you said about yoga, I'm very amateur in that department. It's not something I've studied. I do know that a lot of people misinterpret yoga as just a lifestyle, especially, oh God, in America, it's just like a hip thing that people do. It's
mm,
cool. It's so much more than that. This is a very yoga itself as a word is
mm,
like saying the universe.
mm,
It is a connection to God in many
mm.
ways, or the universe, right? So can you explain that a little bit more, like what the spiritual practice of yoga looks like? Because it isn't just body. There's so much mind, there's so much spirit involved. How does that
Mm.
work?
Oh, it's such a good question. I'm so happy that you asked me, because when I really connected with yoga in a spiritual and ethical way, it totally transformed my life, right? Like, you can be in practice and you can do the same asanas, like the same physical movements, downward facing dog, this and that. You can do it to get, strong and flexible, or you can do it with an intention of self-realization, and it can totally transform your life. So if you are lucky enough to find a teacher that can teach you the roots of yoga, then please listen, because it's
I have a teacher for everybody. Her name's Johanna.
it's a very transformative and beautiful practice. So it may appear, as you say, as a very physical exercise too, but actually the physical part is only one part of yoga. Like there's all these practices leading up to actually meditation, right? So we practice yoga, the physical parts, in order to cleanse and strengthen our bodies so that we can sit in meditation. But if we have bad posture, if your hips are hurting you, your shoulder, you're hunching your back, you're not going to be able to go into a meditative state, right? And then eventually reach enlightenment, right? No, because you're going to be bothered by
Right.
your body, right? So that is like, if you look at it from a very historical point of view. But yoga for me is just, it's just a way to, you use the body to connect and master the mind. Actually, it's all a
Mhm.
practice for the mind, right? And we use these sequences and the physical postures to challenge the mind, because when we go into these really heated moments, we lose our peace, we lose our balance, right? Just as we do in life. But
Yes.
in yoga, we practice is to go upside down, to hold these positions, right? When everything is burning, but we're staying calm and grounded in the center, and we observe it all happening around us.
Wow.
We don't get carried away with it. We actually stay centered in our truth, in our essence, right? So it's like this cleaning process. It's like this physical, mental, spiritual, energetical cleaning process. And like in the end, what is left is the essence of you. So this is what I love about yoga philosophy. It doesn't want to change you and make you someone you're not. It already tells you that you have everything to be happy, right? Which goes
Mm.
totally against our consumeristic society, right? Like where you need
Yeah.
to have all this like stuff externally to be happy. But yoga teaches you that you need none of that. You exist, you just by being have everything to be happy, and all the wisdom, all the knowledge, all the intelligence, right? You just need to remember, you need to find it.
Wow. Well, I'm so glad I asked that as well, because that is incredibly, incredibly illuminating and also inspiring for someone like me who has never had a consistent yoga practice.
Mm,
I've done it here and there, but what an anchor that a person could have in their day, especially if they have trouble finding time to meditate.
mhm,
It reminds me of the book by Michael Singer, The Surrender Experiment. I
mm,
remember I really like his other book, The Untethered Soul. It
mm.
was
It's
incredible.
beautiful. It's one of my favorite books if you're like new
I,
into
I
work.
give it out like I have to admit, I'm like that guy that gives it out like a Bible salesman.
Yeah,
I'm
love
like,
that. I don't know how to use it either. My God, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, so I also read the Surrender Experiment, and I really thoroughly enjoyed that. Not as much. I enjoyed more the process and the not talking about the story, but talking about the process than I did the story. I think
Mm,
each person might enjoy one over the other. If
mm,
you're more of a story person versus, kind of getting down into the fundamentals. But
mm,
the point is, I remember in the story in Surrender Experiment, he talked about what grounded him throughout chaos in his life, getting sued, things falling apart, was a daily yoga practice
mm,
twice a day, and
mm,
that he stuck to it no matter what.
mm,
And that book actually really taught me a lot about the
mm,
importance of a yoga practice and
mm,
having something like that in life. So I'm going to need to know when and how you do these sessions, because especially at home right now, I just started doing a very different form of training, just calisthenics, body
mm.
weight only. I have completely changed my mind about the way I treat my body. I don't want to do weightlifting anymore. I'm constantly in pain, injuries, things like that. Plus, you can get absolutely ripped doing just body weight stuff. And I have a great trainer here. So I would love to know and include it in the notes for people how they can get into your virtual yoga sessions
Yeah.
whenever you do them.
I have weekly group classes and I do privates too. And then I have some retreats. So there are plenty of ways to practice with me, but there's also so many amazing teachers around the world. So just finding
Yeah.
something that is nearby is beautiful. But what I wanted to say with yoga too, um, is why what I see with my clients, we're speaking about how habitual we are as human beings, that we need somewhere or something to return to daily. And I mean,
Mm.
you know this by the journals that you create, Evo, right?
Yes.
Yes, right. Like this daily, place to return to and just pause, because life spins so quickly that we don't have time to even check in with ourselves to be like, where am I? Like, what am I doing? Like, how am I feeling? Like, how am I breathing? Right.
Right.
So yoga really teaches us this mind body connection, which is huge. Right. And this is what I was speaking about, my own journey of how my body was trying to speak to me, but I was not listening because I didn't have that established mind body connection. I couldn't understand like why I was stressed and anxious, and maybe there was something in my way of thinking that was causing that stress, right?
Mm.
Or how I was living. So yoga teaches us that mind body connection, but it also holds that space for us to return to each and every day, any given moment, right? It's only so much you need, right? Everyone can really practice yoga in their homes. You just need a little space. Like you need a mat, even if you don't even need a mat, if you don't need to, if you can't get one, right? You can all
Mhm.
practice. And today there's so much accessible, even free classes online where you can start. So it doesn't have to be this like
Yeah.
uh, lifestyle of expensive yoga pants and expensive.
Right. I pulled it up on I pull up classes, not classes, like videos on YouTube. There's
Yeah,
plenty. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, there's so many and they're great.
But it
Yeah.
just
And I
holds that space, and that is like what I really think, that we need the space to consistently return to, remind ourselves who we are, what we care about, who we want to be,
Mhm.
how we want to show up, what we need right now, like what part of myself need attention, like how can I better myself as a person, how can I show up for my family, how can I show up in community, right? And this is really what yoga teaches us. It teaches us how to become better human beings.
It really does. So you're spending your days right now. I'm sure there's a lot of factors, and you said that you're actually busy, but this is a different form of busyness. Would you agree? Is that this is a different form of busy as being, you know, pushing it at work and putting in long hours. This is busy where you're serving people, you're showing up, you're doing yoga instruction, you're doing these virtual retreats. I mean, there's so many
Mhm.
things that you're doing. So is this a different form of busyness? Is this a healthy busyness? Is there such thing as a healthy busyness? Or do you worry sometimes that like, well, I could be getting too busy and going in the wrong direction, even with things that I love?
Oh, I've been close to burning out several times after my big burnout.
Mm,
100%. And I think this is something that I speak about in my workshops, because again, we are very habitual people. So if you don't really break the cycle, and if you're not staying mindful of the way you live, then it's very easy to get back there again, right? Because you forget.
right.
Today I'm very healthy. I'm very happy. I'm so lucky to be able to do what I do, and I love it, right? I love it so much that I could do it 24/7, right? I am somewhat in my personality an extremist.
Right.
So if I like something, like I love it, I want to do it all the time, like every day. So today I put boundaries to myself, right? So in order for me to have a balanced life, it is really important that I also give space to other aspects of my life. So,
Yes.
seeing my family, like I eat dinner with them when I'm home here every night. I have my daily 90-minute yoga practice. I go for my daily walk in nature, really connecting with all that is around me, but like not in my phone, but like actually like by like looking, smelling, like using my senses. I prioritize sleep. I don't compromise on sleep. Like I have my like
Mhm.
golden rules, and I have my non-negotiables that I stick to, because if I start to play with those, I get out of balance. I mean, I'm not
Well,
a superhuman. I'm
I
like
r-
very much a
I
human.
I really respect you for that. And I know that you're telling the truth 100% because when I reached out to schedule this podcast, you said, I have a lot going on right now
Yeah.
and check back in. And you know why I bring that up? Because I want people to know, like, she's not just saying that, like, you really live that where uh, you very clearly thought about it and you're like, yeah, I could probably jam it in.
Mm,
Um, but like I'll probably miss dinner with my parents. I'll probably have to miss a class. I'll probably be too tired at the end of the day. Like whatever it might be, you had very clear boundaries.
mhm.
And I love that. That just shows the evolution of your own awareness so that you don't fall into that trap again, you know?
Thank you for saying that. And that means a lot. And it's something I fully want to believe that what I teach is what I live. I really try to teach nothing else but what I have myself experienced and what I stand by. So that is for me integrity. And I mean, again, I'm also human. I have my moments where I take on too much, but I've become somewhat good of putting my boundaries. So this is even something I do, especially with my female coaching clients. It's like practicing boundaries, right? Like,
Oh
how do
yeah.
you say no? Like, thank you, but no, thank you, not right now. Like, I have too much going on. And like, what is enough? What is too much, right? Like, do we even know those boundaries? Because I didn't. I was like, yeah, yes, sure, great opportunity. Let's do it. Da, 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 da. But actually, then I'm not showing up fully in the places where I am. So I would come here and I would be tired. I'd be like feeling like this is a chore, right? Like now I'm showing up and I'm excited. I've got you in front of me. I'm filled with energy. Like I'm fully here and nowhere else, right? And that's how I want to
Mhm.
show up in every aspect of my life.
I couldn't agree with you more. The most important thing to me right now and in my journey, especially in my career, has become creating space.
Mm,
I want nothing more than to create empty space on my calendar to
mm,
even be able to show up and do something like this where I can provide value for people or create
mm,
something of value for myself even. Oftentimes I speak and write to discover what I know. In
mm,
order for me to do that, I need space to think, I need space to learn, I need space to process. And if time is the most valuable resource in life, the only it's non-renewable. Time is going by whether we like it or not. And so I would like to have a life that is not packed with a busy schedule, that allows me the opportunity to read the books I want to read, learn the things I want to learn. And I know myself at this point, my driving factor, the thing that makes me most happy in life is learning and
mm,
teaching and sharing. Like that's it, just
mm,
the input and the output, letting it
mm,
in my brain, processing it,
mm,
turning it into some jambalaya, and then in my own words or in my own words through expression of writing or speaking, just kind of get it out. And it's
mm,
not for anybody in particular. It's just it helps me process the learning and make
mm,
it real. And so today my life has become, I have all these, I mean, you can imagine, you get these opportunities all day long. I get, Armand, do you want to do this business? Armand, do you want to invest in this? Hey, there's a shiny object over here, another one over there. And it's generally about online business all the time, like another business, another business, another opportunity. Even in my company, Project Evo, I've had to be the one to be like, let's stick to what works. Let's stay very focused. We don't need another product. We don't need to, hire too many people. And I've done that. I've made those mistakes already before. So I could not agree with you more.
mm.
Um, I'm curious because I'm very curious how you'd answer this question. What would you do if money were no object? Like if
I'm doing
really,
like for me, it's very simple. Right now, people tell me sometimes, you look so happy, like you look like you're living the dream. And my answer is yes, I am living my dream. Like I am truly living my dream. If I were want to do something different, like I would really do it. And I'm not saying this because I'm no millionaire or anything like that. It's not that. It's just that I
yeah,
have enough. Um, I have enough and more, and I'm just so happy to be healthy. And for me, presence and peace is everything. And when
yeah,
the crises hit this year, I saw so many rich people being so stressed out and completely lost their feet, right? But they had no peace and they couldn't be present, right? That they were so disturbed. And it's not only, of course, it's affected every social class in the world. But what I'm trying to say is that for me, what is a real wealth today is being healthy and, having your inner peace that is not going to be disrupted by any shiny object or
yes,
any little fluctuation in your life, right? Like you stay steady, you stay grounded, you stay connected, and you're not being that disturbed by everything that is happening around you, because guess what, it's changing all the time. It goes up, it goes down. Like, we have so many unforeseen tragedies and crises, and things happen. We lose people in our lives, we lose our jobs, we lose our health, you know everything. So if we're constantly a victim to those external circumstances, then so is our mood and our happiness. So today I'm just so, so lucky and happy to be able to have somewhat of that inner peace and that joy inside of myself that I can always return to by closing my eyes, by breathing, by connecting with my body, by connecting with nature, or just being, right?
Mhm.
So I would
Mhm.
do exactly what I'm doing if money was not an object.
Wow. That's wonderful. That's incredible. And I'm sure in the beginning it wasn't as financially lucrative or stable, right? But you went for it anyway. I'm sure there was periods in the beginning when you were like trying to make it work because you want to. We all, I think, desire to be able to answer that question and say, yes, I am doing what I would do regardless of money. Um, and what's interesting is, did the money for you follow the practice and the pursuit of doing what you love? It does appear that way. It appears like the money followed you becoming an an expert in what you do best or what you would like to share with people that provides value to them that also nurtures you. And
Mm.
through that process of doing something you enjoy and becoming better and better and better at it, the money often seems to follow. And it only, your rates only go up.
Mm. Oh,
Over time.
100%. But I think when I started doing what I'm doing today, money was not really my driving force.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to, I made money, I had money. I wanted to create change. I wanted to do something that felt really meaningful. I wanted to provide and serve. So I think they were my driving motor, is like behind everything that I did. And then I trusted that if I do what I love and I do it patiently and consistently, everything else will follow. And I do
Yeah.
see, I believe, I mean, I see this in myself and so many of my clients, like when you are aligned, right? Like when you're living a life in flow, in alignment, things has a way to naturally just work out. Like it works out. And you asked me earlier today, what would I say to someone that is longing to leave their
Yes.
life and go on and do something else?
Yes.
I mean, I would say 100% just do it. Like, just do it. Literally do it. But what it can look very different, right? So for me, changing everything and doing this extreme change that you mentioned, that may not be for everyone, right? That may not be for everyone. It might just mean a little pivot. It might mean changing position within the company. It might
Right.
mean a new job. It might mean ending a relationship, or you know getting a healthy relationship. It might mean starting to paint. It could be small things. And we're so individual, and it's different for each and every one of us what we need, right? And also what we can do. But I'd say, if you have a dream, if you have a longing, if you have this urge, like, just pursue it, because universe will provide for you, or like life will provide for you. You will meet the right people that you need to meet in that exact moment. Finances has a
Yeah.
way work out. And then also, how much do you really need? Like, how much do you
Right.
really need? That's also an individual question, like what lifestyle you want and how you want to live. Money is important, 100%, but like, how much do we really need, and what is just excessive?
Yeah, I really agree. And it's funny because it sounds like something off a bumper sticker, like just follow your bliss and things will work out and the universe has your back.
Ooh,
But
ooh,
it's
ooh,
but it's true. It's true. It happened for me.
true.
Doors
It's
open.
true.
It's
Uh-huh.
weird.
I want to just
Synchronicity occurs.
a little disclaimer. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, it's been hard. Like, during these years of transformation, like every day has not been joyful and happy. Like, oh my God, I've been through so much suffering and crying, and like uh, a lot of hardship. When I left my job in London and left my boyfriend and left my house and put everything in storage, people were like, "You are absolutely crazy. You're in the top of your
Mhm.
career. You got this perfect life and you're leaving it. Like, you're just mad. Where are you going to go and what? Travel and teach yoga? Like, can you make a living of that?" You're like, and at that point, of course, like, it was hard. It wasn't easy, but it was my decision. I had this urge. I just pursued it, and the rest did work out. I can tell you it did, but it's not been, a straight line. Of
Yeah.
course, life continues to be life and you have its challenges, but the way that I approach my hardship in life today versus how I did a couple of years ago is completely different.
Mm.
Now I'm like, oh, thank you so much for bringing this into my life. Most often, not every time, but I try to go in with the mentality where I see these obstacles as opportunities for me to transform, to expand, to grow, to take that step closer, right? Like further on my path, right? To learn, to heal, and just trying to turn obstacles to opportunities. That's my thought.
Johanna, I appreciate you so much for being you. I really do. You're transforming the world and healing the world and giving us all a true example of how beautiful transformation can be. So I really thank you because it takes a lot of courage. And we just need more people that can awaken to that, because all it does is it provides a shining example of what's possible. And these are the most inspiring sort of stories because they're real. They're real, and you bring the nuances with it that every day has not been perfect, but I can clearly see that you would do it again and again and again, and that this is the path. This is
Mhm.
this is the way. So I'm very grateful for you, and I'm very grateful to be your friend. And I'm so glad we've stayed in touch over the years. I really appreciate it. Do you have any kind of last words or any asks for anybody listening? Anything like that you'd like to wrap up with?
I want to thank you for what you're doing and having me here. I think I'm so honored to be in this space. So thank you for that, Arman. Um, and with that said, even if things have been challenging in that path, I would never a single day regret my decision, and I would never want to go back to anything else. So let us all individually, awaken to whatever feels meaningful and true to ourselves. And really, by the work that we do individually, this is really how we create change. So you matter. I matter. Anyone that listens matter. Like each and every thought, word, and action that you do has a ripple effect on the world. So let us be kinder and just more compassionate to both ourselves, but everyone around us.
Beautiful. Amazing. What's the best way for people to follow up with you and learn more about what you're doing?
I'd say Instagram is probably the place where I update my events and happenings most frequently. So you can find me on with Yohanna, Yohanna with a Y. So with
Awesome.
Yohanna or with Yohanna.com is my website. And just reach out there, email me or call me.
Perfect.
I'm
I will
happily.
link to both in the description of the show for anybody listening. Just tap that with Johanna, give her a follow. She has an amazing page, and I highly recommend you join all her classes and just follow along and take your journey wherever it needs to go. She's a beautiful example. Thank you so much, Johanna. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
There it is. There it is. There it is. Oh, I am on a high right now after that one. That was a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, Johanna. And thank you, yes, you, for listening and tuning in to this conversation. It was absolutely beautiful. I really wanted to go through. There's so much of Johanna's story that resonates with me, and there's so many similarities even between our character, our approach to life, and the way that we are going on this journey of answering these questions of how to live and how to find and experience the maximum amount of joy and happiness with this experience that we have. So I'm really grateful to have had a conversation with Johanna, and I'm grateful for you for listening. So With that said, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure you're subscribed. That way you get notifications when episodes go live. And if you haven't, please leave a review in Apple Podcasts. Those help the show a lot. They help other people discover the show. And it also helps me because I get to see what you think and read your awesome words in the Apple Podcasts store or whatever it's called. All right, my crazy people, my lovely people, much love to you wherever you are. Take care of yourselves in this world, and believe and know that life can be absolutely beautiful and magical, and that we all have the power to choose happiness. Until next time, peace.